Are you breaking up with your partner but living in the same place because you can't find somewhere else to go? Well, today's episode is going to give you 9 considerations to think about when going through your separation or divorce. Welcome, Mum.
Hello, Laura. Hi, everyone.
Now, today we're really going to talking to those people who are separated under one roof, who are just trying to exist and figure out what to do next. And that is a big step. But if you are separated and you're living in the one house and you just want the official divorce paper, go and listen to our Separated Under One Roof episode that we've already done. Thank you, Mum, for coming along. And a reminder to everybody that whilst Mum is an amazing family lawyer with over 35 years experience, you should go and see your own lawyer because this is not legal advice. This is just legal education for Australia. But this will be helpful for anyone living anywhere in the world. So let's go to our jingle and get started.
Hello, I'm Laura Furiosi, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom.
Just a reminder to anyone who's listening today, this has discussions of family violence and coercive control that may be triggering to some people. So be mindful of that before you listen to this episode. And if you do feel triggered, you can call Lifeline or you can call 1-800-RESPECT if this situation is yours. And if you are in a danger, of course, you can call 000 and speak to the police immediately. Okay, Mum, so we really have seen a rise, haven't we, in people living under one roof with their exes because of property costs.
Oh, yes. In my whole career, I've never seen it as bad as this. Be an occasional thing. Now it seems like 1 in every 3 people that we talk to has or is been separated under one roof.
And we see so many problems that arise from this, like so many issues. So we're trying to narrow it down for people, aren't we, with these 9 things. So let's just start. First of all, and you can go and listen to an episode we've done on 10 healthy boundaries to create during divorce, but we're going to talk about the boundaries you probably should be setting in your home because you're living with your ex. I mean, most people in the movies, you see them go, no, we're done. And then they just walk out at the door and that kind of seems to be the end of it. But no one talks about that bit in the middle where they haven't left and you're all just sitting in the house together. And so there's physical and emotional boundaries. So, Mum, first of all, let's just ask, legally, can your ex kick you out?
Not really, no. Unless there's family violence and they get a family violence order against you, that may include what's called an ouster order, which requires one person to leave the house.
Okay. Yeah. But other than that, they can't say, well, I bought this house, you get out, or I did all the work, you get out.
And if they do that, it is a little bit of family violence. But geez, you've got to be careful that you're safe. If someone tells you they want you out of the house and they have a tendency to violence, I wouldn't be staying in that house for 1 minute.
Okay. So for starters, if anybody is feeling unsafe, go and call 1-800-RESPECT. If you are in immediate danger, call the police, go to the police station. There are shelters for people that we've got a list of emergency shelter information below in the show notes. But there are a lot of people, Mum, whose exes are either just high conflict, manipulative but don't do anything, or one of those avoidant.
Yes.
So they're just sitting in these houses, and emotionally, that would be really hard for people. So what do you tell your clients to do in that instance?
Yeah. Well, you understand, so if you have a breakup and you're under one roof, obviously someone's said something, and it isn't, like you said, the sort of the I'm leaving forever sort of thing, or throwing clothes over the balcony. There must have been some sort of discussion, usually a row. Okay, so you really have to keep yourself safe. I've heard of people who move in where one person moves into the lounge, when sleeps on the lounge chair, but that makes that person vulnerable. Plus, they're sitting there, you're like the log on the lounge, and people got tippy-toe past to make a cup of tea or any of that. So try to make the best of the home that you've got. If it means the kids have to bunk up together in one room, so be it. Get yourself a room. Make sure you can, lock it, to be honest. Make sure you can lock it. And just, it's horrible. But yes, try to sort of work out spaces. the most successful, if I can call it that, most successful under one roof separations happen in 2-story houses where someone just goes downstairs.
Right.
And the other person lives upstairs and you set up a makeshift kitchen downstairs.
Right. Okay. So lots of people are doing that right now. So there's no need to be feeling bad for yourself. I do know a lot of people worry about the kids being that, and we're going to talk about kids a little bit later on. But let's talk about communication then. So you've set yourself up some physical boundaries. Emotionally, you should be setting boundaries as well. Don't be, talking about stuff you don't necessarily need to be talking about. If there's an issue that you guys had a big fight over, it's not like you're going to convince them otherwise. Perhaps, marriage counselling maybe, but don't do it yourselves. It's time to have a break from that. But communication-wise, Mum, what are some of the mistakes you see people make in the legal world of communicating when they're together still under the one roof?
Yes, and this I think applies before they divorce, before they actually separate as well, that really, if they're in a shouty relationship with each other in front of the kids, those are mistakes. Make sure you don't send any texts that might compromise you. I've seen many cases, I think you have too, Laura, where someone will send the person we're talking to a really awful text and they quick as a flash fire one back, and then the ex only puts their message before the courts or shows it to the police and doesn't tell the whole story. So you really have to be restrained. And if you are going to discuss anything, even in a civil manner, it's really not, I wouldn't do it in the house. It just pollutes the energy of the space, I think, without sounding too airy-fairy. I think you need to be in a neutral space, probably with a mediator, and certainly not in front of the kids if you've got any kids. But so you need to be, if they flare up, if everything goes pear-shaped and you're stuck under one roof without any support at all, bad things can happen, and we know.
So what about, and I see this happen a lot, so they've fought this, are we not going to separate, or we are separating, we just have to sort it all out, but I don't have the energy to do it right now, so I'm just going to sleep in this room, you sleep in that room, and we'll just sort it out later.
Yep.
I have seen, particularly with manipulative controlling, this is the time when they say, hey, why don't we just agree to do 50-50 split, 50-50 split of the kids, and let's just be super reasonable. And here, I got this written up for you. Can you just sign it? We see this happen a lot. And some people, I think, when they're separated but still in the same house, particularly if they're not the main breadwinner, feel trapped.
Yes.
And they feel like they can't leave because they don't have any money to go anywhere. And that may be a financial abuse red flag you need to look into. But they can't go anywhere. They're stuck there. And they feel like signing this consent order, financial agreement that they've written up without seeing a lawyer, potentially, is going to be the only way they're going to get money and the only way they can escape. And Mum, do you see that happen to people?
Oh, my goodness. Yep, you said it exactly how it happens. And it might be a very small amount of money, but you don't get a penny unless you sign this document. I hear you, Rosie. I hear you. And you've said it really well. So be careful of those sort of it's really blackmail moments.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry if you're feeling trapped, people at home. I mean, the court they don't expect you to live together under one roof because it's been known since the 1980s by the court that it's unreasonable to expect people to live together under one roof.
I don't think in the cave times, cavemen and cavewomen were living, or anyone was living together under one cave. They would have been, one of them would left. One would have gone, I'm going to another cave. See you later, buddy. Yes.
Yeah. And then there's the cases where you can't leave. And that's what I think we're talking about. You've got no money and you're in this sort of situation in the house and they won't go and you can't go. What do you do? And so it's a worry.
So what do you do? What do you do, Mum? You've got spousal maintenance as an option?
Yes. Although, Rose, it's a hard one, isn't it? Because if you're living under the same roof as someone, then if you bring an application or get a lawyer letter sent to them, how does that change things at home? It's really hard to negotiate spousal maintenance or anything like that through lawyers' letters. I think I'd be scared if I lived with an aggressive person and my lawyer sent them a letter. I don't know that I'd want to go home that night. So it's kind of, I think what we go back to our personality types, Laura.
If you've got avoidant, you could
Yes.
probably try and get spousal maintenance so you can leave.
Well, yeah.
If you've got a manipulative and controlling, probably not a good idea.
You might need to leave first and then bring an application for spousal maintenance. Yeah.
But you could have that prepared before you leave.
Oh, yes.
So get all the work done before you go. And then the minute you leave, boom, put it in.
Yes. And sometimes it's not safe to tell a person you're actually leaving. So, and in those cases, you can leave, get a letter sent from the lawyer or whatever.
Conflict.
High conflict doesn't, look, I think I try, I've seen this negotiated through text, by the way. Write a list of your expenses, send a text to them what you think. Make sure you don't keep it too low because they may use it in court later. Ask them for X amount of dollars and let that person beat it down to another figure, a lower figure. And then you might get something out of them. I think the more that the court and practitioners, I guess, push the notion of coercive control through financial control, the more likely lawyers are to say to their clients who are likely to do this, say, don't do that. Don't do that because ultimately you're going to end up with less property. And that's with the amendments to the Family Law Act, which are coming through on the 10th of June this year.
Right. So realistically, you can, if you feel like you're trapped on the couch, get prepared and see if you can get maintenance. If you feel like you've got an avoidant who's on the couch and won't leave,
the log in the lounge room. Yep.
See, go and listen to our Gold Digger episode, and that gives you some great steps. But also, you could do the opposite and offer them spousal maintenance to get them out of the house.
Yes.
But then there's also child support. A lot of people don't know. You can apply for child support whilst separated under one roof. So if you are worried that you couldn't leave because you can't afford to look after the children, if you can get child support and spousal maintenance, that may help you until property settlement. And then that way you're not signing a horrible, bad agreement just so you can get some money to live.
And in some circumstances, you can get Centrelink payments as a family benefit payments. So tee it up with Centrelink, tee it up with the child support agency. That can all be ready before you take that leap if you need to take that leap. I think we forgot to talk about amicable under one roof.
Yes, yeah.
And amicable people under one roof, that never used to happen really. But now with the financial issues that people have, you are sometimes separated under one roof. And the trap there, I guess, it's probably a good trap to have, is that you continue pretty well as normal, only you'll have maybe separate sleeping spaces. And you roll along, and it can become almost like you were married again or back together again, with you maybe cooking the meals, they may do your washing, and they come kind of like a flatmate, which is great and fine and probably good for the kids if both parents are there, if there's kids. But it is an issue, and I know we won't go to talk too much about the legal side, but it is an issue when you ultimately apply for divorce because you've blurred that separation line a little bit. So, yeah.
But you need to make sure you're not blurring the line. Go and listen to the Separated Under One Roof episode where we tell you how to make sure there's a really definite line between when you separated and when you were together. So good one there. And here's a tip. It's not having sex. That doesn't count. Whether you have sex or not, it doesn't count.
And I always say, and I think it was a judge that said this, there needs to be something different between the day before you separate and the day after you separate. There needs to be a different quality to that relationship.
Whilst we're on that as well, just a reminder before we jump into the co-parenting part, it might be a really good idea if you are trying to negotiate and it's amicable spousal maintenance or child support or whatever, maybe set a time where you talk about that with your ex and have a clear boundary when you are not going to talk about those things. Because every time you see them, maybe walk down the hall, you see them, you don't want them to say, have you thought about it yet? Or are you going to agree to that yet? So maybe you could say, okay, let's try and do this if it's safe and if they're the right personality type. Let's try and organize this. But I want to set a clear time that we talk about it. And it's only in those times that I want to talk about it, because otherwise your life is just going to be trying to either hide from them or it would just be horrible.
You know what, though, Laura?
Yeah.
Even if you're not talking about it, you will be thinking about it nonstop. and
True.
you're thinking about if you've had an uncomfortable, let's say, discussion, perhaps at a local coffee shop or out in the park or something, then that changes people's feelings. And then if you cut off that discussion, it can be really yucky. So if you don't have to talk about stuff, I mean, some people are separated under one roof not because they can't afford to leave, but because they want to get the best deal that they can. And I think it's important for you to know, everyone, you don't have to live in the house to still have a claim on the house.
Brilliant. Yes. Yeah. That's a very good, because I do hear a lot of people who were refusing to leave because they feel like that if they leave, they don't get the house. But it does, when it comes to stuff, can potentially bite you in the bum with stuff. So make sure if you do go, you take the stuff you like. Talk about the co-parenting, a no-brainer. Try and avoid conflict in front of the kids. Like, that's a no-brainer. Don't fall into the trap though, where if you're the primary carer, but if that's how you want it to continue, fine, but continue to be the primary carer. But don't fall into the trap where you're separated and then they just start going out every night or doing stuff and you're doing all the parenting and you guys wanted to share parenting. Like, set a schedule up, set a timetable so that you get a break too. Don't you think, Mum? And the kids
that's
get
really good
time with both parents.
Yes.
In a healthy way.
And you get that person who's perhaps been disinterested and suddenly become parent of the year or want to be. And kids love that. Normally, if they've had a disinterested parent, they think the sun's come out,
Yes.
But if they're manipulative and controlling, this may not last and it can break the kids' hearts, I guess. So, yeah, there needs to be boundaries. And the upstairs, downstairs works well. They sleep a couple of nights downstairs, a couple of nights upstairs. The kids move between the places.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, even you could just say, hey, I'll do dinner for the kids, Monday through to Wednesday, and I'll have dinner with them. Can you maybe just go somewhere else for dinner or go to your room for dinner? Like, if the kids don't notice, like, without making it obvious, and then I'll take the kids to school Monday to Wednesday. But like you said, Mum, there are manipulative, controlling who've gone to see a lawyer and they've realized, oh, wait, if you get the kids more, you're probably going to get more money. Or I've never done anything with the kids. I need to step up my game so I can get more kid time after separation. So you need to kind of protect your time with the children. So setting up those boundaries and saying, all right, so you can do school run from here to here. I'll do this from here to here. Yes. If they want to help and it is manipulative, sometimes they're really bad at it and then they give up halfway through. So don't feel too bad. Hey.
Yeah. And I think the kids, honestly, they'd rather have one happy parent in the car with them or at the dinner table with them than a kind of a stilted, at best, eating meals together with everyone sitting around the table, because kids aren't silly and they will pick up, even little kids pick up on a vibe.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and they will pick up if you guys don't back each other. They pick up.
Oh, my
so
goodness.
much. Especially little, I don't know what it is about little kids. I used to be a primary school teacher. Yeah. They can pick up when you're not feeling well. If you've got a headache, the kids would muck up in my class, they'd know. And if you had a bad day, they'd know. And so you really have to both, even though you're separated, you are going to have this co-parenting relationship if it's a safe one in the future. You might as well set it up to not fail at the start and say, okay, don't let the kids go to one parent and say, can I go to Disneyland? And that parent say no. And then go to the other parent and say, can I go to Disneyland? And the other parent say yes. That really, it happens all the time. So don't let that
together.
Don't let that manipulation happen, because the kids will step it up. So have a time to talk about co-parenting things if it's amicable. Set that time as well and be unified. Okay. So basically you are going to set yourself up a parenting plan before you've even left the house, is what we're saying. Now, number 5, Mum, is managing finances. Yeah. And we've done an episode you can go and listen to in depth called Income, Savings and Expenses, on what legally is what. But Mum, can you explain that a little bit? Legally, who's supposed to pay for what? And do you have to keep all your money in the joint account until you're fully divorced, or can you pull your money out and start living separately financially?
Financially. People who have been together for a while have such entangled and enmeshed finances, but you do need to start to be independent. So some people have every penny they earn, every cent they earn, I should say, goes into the joint account for both of them and all the expenses are paid from that. And that sounds fair enough when you're a couple. When you're not a couple, I usually talk to my people about perhaps go to a different bank, set up your own account. If you're getting wages or if you're getting parenting payments or child support or anything, get it into that account and tell your ex that you're fine if they get their own account. But agree on amount of money that needs to be paid every month or week and put that money into the joint account and keep your other finances separate, even if every cent you get has to go in the joint account or nearly every cent. If you've got an account shared with your ex, they can see your movements, they can quiz you on what you spent your money on, and it just melts away at your newfound quasi-freedom, okay?
Yeah.
Now, as far as the law is concerned, mortgages or landlords, as far as they're concerned, both of you are liable, and if they can't get one, they'll get the other, and you each have to pay, so that you may need to have some discussions with the bank.
If your name's on the mortgage.
If your name's on the mortgage, that's right. Yeah. You might have to have a discussion with the bank. They have hardship and DV deals that you can do or things that you can do. Also, you might need to talk to the landlord because someone's going to have to pay that rent. And then when someone moves out, because they have to get somewhere to live, usually, and that costs money, then the person who stays in the house, they call the former matrimonial home, the person who stays in the former matrimonial home, they should be paying their expenses. That's what the court expects.
Paying their own expenses, not the person moving out. The person who stays in the house pays the mortgage, the light bills, the gas, electricity, everything.
Yes, and arguably rates and electricity, rates and insurance. So, but if you don't have enough money for that, then if the other person's safely out, then you can really quickly bring an application for maintenance in usual cases. Mm-hmm. In fact, I'd say if you're under one roof and the other side is showing no signs of moving out, it really still would be in your interest, I think, to get child support ready to go. So you just hit the button, get Centrelink prepped and ready so that when and if they do leave, you're not stranded with no money at all.
So let's talk about managing finances based on the 4 personality types, okay? Because you've got your household expenses, you've got kids' stuff, and it's a good idea to document it no matter what type of personality you've got. So you've got the amicable. So you guys could sit down, look at all the bills, figure out who pays what, create a joint account for all the bill stuff, keep your own separate accounts, and just keep treading water until you have property settlement. And then that would be great, right?
And that'd be wonderful, yes.
Decide who moves out, who can afford to move out, and who can afford to stay in the house until it's time to be done, or whether you just stay together in the house until you get your property settlement. High conflict, Mum. That would be a little bit trickier, but could it be done?
Yeah, that would be a terrible candidate to be separated under one roof with.
Yes.
But yes, if they don't agree, okay, if they won't do that, no, you're going to do this. Or they might say, I'm going to pay the mortgage because they somehow think that's going to get them some more ownership of it. Then you're going to have to ignore their side and just do your side. Set up your own account, definitely. And always, don't want them arguing over every cent. And ring the bank if there's a loan, ring the landlord if there's rental, and say, look, I'm going to pay my half if you can afford it, and my ex is going to pay their half. And you may have to be negotiating with the bank because sometimes high conflict won't pay. Or
I think it's important to note right here, we've done an episode on mortgages, who pays the mortgage, like a whole episode. Go and listen to that one if that's your drama at the moment, because there are some strategies you can use and there's some things you need to know, because yes, just because they're paying the mortgage does not mean it gets added back later. So there are things that are important to know here. So, Mum, with manipulative and controlling, is it better maybe to go and have a look yourself at all the income and out?
Right.
A list of all the bills, and then maybe keep tabs on that. Ask them if they'll pay half.
Yep. And don't trust them necessarily. So ring your insurance companies, check in the bank statements all the time. Yes, I think with manipulative and controlling, I talk about people getting their comeuppance. Their comeuppance is coming on the 10th of June, I hope, because that sort of behaviour, if If they've got the money to pay and they don't, or you've got the money to pay the mortgage and those other things and you don't, then not only are you sort of depriving a person of spousal maintenance that they might succeed if they go to court, but your failure to do so willingly, or their failure to do so willingly, is great evidence of just what we said, a manipulative and controlling person, which the Family Law Act now calls coercive control, which we have occasionally called a narcissist. But that sort of person, while they think they're being very clever, is actually putting themselves out there for what they really are. So,
and it can affect property settlement.
It can. And if you don't have access, it's hard to believe in the 2020s that both people don't have access to the mortgage, the bank accounts and that. But there are people who just get housekeeping money, like someone in the 50s, stay-at-home people, particularly vulnerable.
Yeah.
So, yes, but it takes a long time for their uppance to come.
If you are one of those people, please go get our checklist on things to try and find out and get copies of, and really just get across it all. But anyone who's listening, if you're separated under one roof, in the ideal world, if everybody kumbaya and get along, you would make a list of all the stuff and then try and split it fairly in the meantime while you're treading water. But if one person leaves, then they're going to pay their own bills and rent at some other place, and you'll be footing the bill at that place to decide. And you can have that discussion. Can I afford to stay? Go and talk to Centrelink. Go and look at spousal maintenance options. But you do have to kind of think about this stuff. I think a lot of people get separated under one roof and they just think it's all too hard. And then they stay separated under one roof for years, like just limbo.
Yeah. Also, if you can't afford to pay the payments to stay in the house and the other person can afford to pay the payments and you ask for spousal maintenance, that should be part of what you get as spousal maintenance. I think amicable people and maybe to some extent just the plain old high conflict sort of person or avoidant and amicable person, that discussion could be had early on and maybe even a little written agreement done. But, if they have no intention of making the payment, Laura, if they have no intention of paying and you can't afford to stay, doesn't mean you can't stay. That just means that you need to get spousal.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so the next step is obviously some of you, if you do that and try and do it all in writing by email or say, hey, let's have a talk. I've sent you an email. Can we talk about it?
Or text.
Dealing with conflict. Okay. So obviously fights happen, especially if they've separated. They've decided either they don't like each other or they've done something horrible or goodness knows why people break up. But any of those reasons, which would be a flare point if it's brought up.
Yep.
So there are some really, really bad things that can happen in these times. And it's usually really looked at with a microscope of the court more than any other time. They don't look at when you were getting along well. They don't look at when you were doing the best behavior and holding your tongue. They're going to look at when you lose your biscuits.
Yes.
So what kind of warnings do you have for anyone listening about fighting and conflict in this moment?
Yeah.
You're invited to our free webinar. Whether you're stuck at the beginning of deciding to divorce or you're struggling to find your way through the legal jargon and fear of the unknown of the legal process, we are here to empower you to take control. Join us to learn what steps you can take, followed by a live Q&A where you get Lynn, my amazing mum, and family law accredited specialist to answer your questions. All you have to do is go to www.thedivorcecourse.com.au and click on Reserve My Seat. We'll see you there. Hurry, spaces are limited, so don't miss out. Register today.
What kind of warnings do you have for anyone listening about fighting and conflict in this moment?
Yes, you do. It's called people's behavior is when they're under the spotlight of the court, and people do usually behave themselves once they know court is inevitable. But everyone if you've separated or you're separating under one roof, assume everything you say and do will find its way into an affidavit. Even if they richly deserve what you said, avoid venting. You might have to do meditation or something.
Yeah.
But
well,
don't.
There's the famous quote. It says, dance like no one's watching, but text and message and email like the judge is watching. And you may not think you ever will go to court, but sadly, a lot of people don't realize they're in a coercive controlled relationship or a manipulative controlling relationship, or that they're going to have post-separation abuse. They don't realize it because they're in it, particularly if you're still living there. You might not realize it. And if you are one of those people, go and listen to the 4 things you might not realize are coercive control, because that's been an eye-opener to a lot of people. Or what happens when amicable goes wrong, because that also happens to people where they think they're in an amicable relationship. They say no, and then they find out, oh, wait, actually, I'm not in an amicable relationship. It's only amicable if I don't say no. And then all these things start happening, and they start using things that, out of context against you. So, I've heard of videos being taken of people who lost their nanas after the ex has said something to completely rev them up. I've heard of screenshots of texts like you've talked of, Mum, recordings of their social media accounts or screenshots of their rant on social media. So what other things can you warn people about?
You've listed a good many of them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that the court Facebook's a blessing now to the court, and text messages, because it all is revealed usually through those. But remember, like you say, Laura, the court only comes in halfway through the story, or 2/3 way. So no matter how richly deserved you think this sledging is going to be, if the relationship is over and you're separated, I can tell you never in the history of mankind, as far as I would put my heart on that, has telling someone they're being an idiot or telling them to stop being such a bully has ever actually achieved stopping them being an idiot and stopping them being a bully. So stop fighting, let go of the rope. If you've made the decision, then you need to walk away with some dignity.
Mm. And if you feel like you need to vent, don't vent on socials. Just don't. Just go get a journal.
Okay. Yeah.
Or just, like you said, go and see a psychologist. But even seeing a psychologist, I've heard that the manipulative controlling people can subpoena your notes if you end up in court, and then they use those notes.
But protected confidences and your psychologist notes may not now be so readily available to the court. Okay? So may.
I trust it. All these new rules, Mum.
Yeah.
I just don't yet. I know you're so confident about it, but I want to wait till I see it. I want to see it in action.
Well, I reckon where kids are concerned, I think the judges will still let that evidence come in, will still let people subpoena, because they're looking at each of you. If your ex is making, comments, and let's face it, you're probably in therapy from the relationship, then you may go back to your therapist and it may all be about them, and then they want to know what you said. It's just awful. And maybe once there's a bit of case law, like it only comes in on the 10th of June, I'll be able to give you some indication of how the court goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the moment, we only know what the legislation's going to be.
Yes. And Mum's saying 10th of June, 2025. So that kind of leads us into prioritizing your self-care. And I know that sounds wishy-washy. We've already kind of talked about seeing a psychologist, but being aware that those notes can be subpoenaed, but maybe 10th of June, they won't be able to do it so readily. But that's not the 10th of June, yes. But, creating yourself a new routine, setting yourself up, even though you're still in the same house and it must be horrible, why not redesign your space? Why not redesign your life? Create new routines. If you want to get out of the house on the days you don't have to look after the kids for dinner, go and do Zumba or go and join a choir or, find some
bushwalking club. Yeah.
Go and find some ways to get out and about and meet some new people and just feel a little bit better about yourself. Yeah. Being around people who are not going to be a storm cloud in your day, basically. And just, yes.
Is that us, Rose?
No.
I think I wonder, I have heard people say, I can't bring myself to listen yet. Mm-hmm. And I know because we talk about it all the time. That's all we do. But, our listeners can control when they hear that.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're under one roof, you're on eggshells because you don't know when the flare-up's going to be said or a comment's going to be said. So, get yourself out of the house and do other things.
And I always love doing a vision board, and I'm not a hippie. Not that I have anything wrong with hippies, but I've had mummies, but I 100% love doing a vision board. And I did one after separation.
Yeah.
And I put on there everything that I wanted to see moving forwards in my life. And it all did happen. It took 3 years to happen, but it all did happen. So why don't you do that? Kind of focus forwards. I know you've got to deal with the past and you've got to deal with sorting all this out, but you can have some focus forward moments. So, Mum, that gets us on to the next one, which is prepping for the next steps. So they do have to eventually organise all this and sort this all out, because we've basically been talking about treading on water. This is what you do while you're treading on water. And if you haven't listened to our car episode, go and listen to that. We did that last week. That will help you decide what happens with the cars while you're treading on water. But, Mum, what kind of things can people do while they're separated under one roof to prepare for the eventual, sorting out property settlement and children's matters?
I think one of the most important things you can do is document what's in the house in case you leave one night in your pajamas and there's no going back in, because there is a kind of finality when someone moves out. There's Davis's case, which is, I think I was talking to you about it before, Laura. It's actually a 1982 case. So it was only 6 years after the Act came in, that says it's unreasonable to expect two people to live under one roof when they're separated. Therefore, if someone asks the court for an order for sole occupancy, then it might be you that gets it. It might be them. So quickly video everything in the house one day when it's safe to do so and they're not around, okay? And in the drawers and in the filing cabinet. If you've got time, if people still have filing cabinets, if you've got time, you can start to take your really precious things and maybe things like your passport and certificates, get that out of the house to a trusted friend. For me, some of the things I took were my musical instruments and I got them out of the house. If you know how observant your ex is, they may not notice it. If you're taking some stuff quietly, bit at a time out of the house, the stuff that you can't replace, the sentimental things.
Baby scrapbooks, I did like a little baby scrapbook for each child after they were born. It got less and less easy to do it as I had more children.
Yours is rubbish. I did it too. Yours is, do you want it?
I remember looking at my sister's and hers was amazing. And I'm looking at mine going, I'm only like 5 pages, but when you've got other kids, it's impossible to do that. So,
but 3 years.
You could sneak them out of the house if you wanted. And I don't think anyone's going to go, where did the baby scrapbooks go? So,
the judge isn't going to say, you give that baby scrapbook back.
Yeah.
No, because not everyone sees the value.
Yeah. So if it is important to you, then those things you can do. We've also got the checklist of kind of financial things that you should be starting to look for. If you think you've got a manipulative, controlling ex who's going to be a nightmare with disclosure, which is showing bank statements, showing their superannuation information, all of that, you could, if it's safe, try and get that information before you go. I'm not sure what the laws are in other countries, but I know in Australia that there's nothing wrong with you getting that information for your settlement. So you could screenshot it or just take a photo with your phone, just because some people don't even know what super fund their ex is with. And super's included in your property settlement. So
that's all you know. If you know they are secretive about superannuation and you know the name of the company, once you're in court, you can do, or even before court, you can do the superannuation information form and find out. But some people just don't know anything. I think Pedro says, doesn't he, Laura, you've got to know your financial systems in your house. So educate yourself.
Yeah, so find out. So he kind of talked to, I don't think he used the analogy of water, but imagine the money is water and it's coming into your house. Then how does it go out in the little streams? Where does the money go? And you've got to kind of make sure you know where it's coming in and where it's going out. And I guess if you can, screenshot, figure out how much they're earning in banks. I've heard of people saying, my income's only this much when it's not, all of this stuff.
Yes.
So try and prep yourself as much as you can. You can go to our website, thedivorcecourse.com.au, and go to the free resources section. And in there is checklist before you go checklist, which would be really great for you.
There's another thing too. I've had a couple of people over the years, and this shocked me. They've applied for Centrelink payments, and only to be told that, because remember, Centrelink's Commonwealth Government taxation central Commonwealth government, they talk to each other, only to be told, no, your income's too high. And they go, what? I don't earn anything. Oh, well, your ex has been income splitting with you for years to lower the tax. And they go, well, I never saw any of that money. And if you do that, if you try to do that, that could look like fraud. It's getting easier now, as I think that the courts are starting to recognize coercive control in these relationships, but it's not hard for you to look up and see who are the directors of your company, who's the secretary, who are shareholders, and make sure and keep an eye on it in case you get removed and stuff like that.
Yeah, so we've got a great episode called Weapons of Tax Destruction with Pedro, and he does talk you through how you can look some of that stuff up, check your credit rating, because we've also heard, I think it was the Women's Legal Services, I heard a lady talk about how her husband was getting credit cards out in her name and she didn't know, and they were massive debts. So there are things that you can do to get all of that undone, but you've got to be on top of it, and the sooner the better. So I don't want to scare anyone, but I'm just saying, because if you get stuck in limbo in this stage, things can happen, and your ex, if they're manipulative, controlling, can start to try and hide stuff and shuffle things around. So you really need to be on it, and this is your opportunity if you're still under one roof and it's safe. And that gets us to and so with preparing for the next steps, Mum, and we're going to talk about safety considerations in a minute. The next step really is going to see a lawyer, finding out where you stand. You could do that while you're still separated under one roof.
Absolutely. I think you should, because if you're under one roof and you're kind of locked in with maybe a manipulative person, they'll become the only source of truth for you. And they'll be going, don't be ridiculous, you're never getting this. And they say, let's look at the lawyers involved, let's not touch the super. And the reality is they've been to see a lawyer. You need to go and see a lawyer. It's a bit clandestine, I guess. Make sure they don't send you a receipt or anything to your email.
Ask if you can pay by cash.
Yes, IDATM, get it out. Just and make sure it's a one-off, that there's no follow-up letters, because you might feel bad doing this kind of preparation, but if you've got a manipulative and controlling ex, they are doing it.
You need to know where you stand, and every situation is different. So they're the kind of things you can do to prep for your next stage. Then you've got safety considerations. This is the last one we need to touch. Yeah. So, you need to be aware if you are in this relationship and you are feeling trapped, you feel like you can't leave. Is there coercive control? Is there financial abuse? Do you know what that is? And do you know what it looks like?
Yeah.
And you are physically, and there's, people say, but he's never or she's never hit me. Doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't coercive control or family violence, because physical is just one side of the coin.
Yeah. With coercive controlling things, and you look back and you think, well, I understand now, but I didn't understand at the time. One of the tests is, like you say no and see what happens. But I think in really intense situations, a failure of you to say yes to something can trigger a violent outburst. And we all know of the people who, like, none of those people, let's say it, none of those women who went home the night or the day that they were murdered expected that to happen. So you need to be careful. It's better to be thought of as an overreact than to underreact. And one of the keys that I pick up is when people say, I'm not allowed to, or he won't let me. And even if he doesn't say anything, if he is controlling you in that way, that you just don't say no to him and you say yes to everything, and then you think that's amicable, it's not. That's the perfect coercive control relationship where you're happy to be trapped. So you need to talk to go and see a counsellor, a psychologist.
So we've got a great episode, like I said, called 4 Things You Might Not Realize Are Coercive Control. We've also got When Amicable Goes Wrong, where people do think they're in amicable relationships, but then they find out that it's not. And it's not usually until you've left where you really realize how bad, if you are in a coercive controlling relationship, how bad it is, because to you, it is normal. It is normal.
Yes.
And you may not speak to your friends about it, but if you do start speaking to people about it, they may start saying, well, that's actually not normal. So a great way to, if you think in the back of your mind, a bit, I'm not sure, but I do feel like I'm not allowed to do things, and it's more of a parent-child relationship than two-adult relationship, call 1-800-RESPECT. Go listen to some of our episodes and just really have a think about, what's going on, and see a psychologist or talk to some other people outside of your family and outside of your relationship. And again, please create a safety plan for any of you, because even though you may think it's amicable, I'm not trying to scare anyone, but if you all have a safety plan, you could all just say, okay, well, if it all goes to hell, like if my ex just starts yelling and I feel scared, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. I'm going to go and stay at such and such's house. I've got a bag packed. Just have a safety plan. And one of the things that they do recommend is, put a little bit of money aside, have some cash stashed away, have a new bank account like Mum mentioned, where you just got some money just in case, so that if you have to go, you have to go. If you've got kids, have a little bag packed for them somewhere secretly stashed at a friend's house. Because Mum, how many times have you heard where people have just left in their pajamas with nothing? It's not something you would ever imagine would happen to you, but it is pretty rife in Australia. I'm just going to put in here the trigger warning.
And it has been forever. Like I started in legal practice in about 1985, 86 as an article clerk. And the first example of it was a woman who couldn't stop crying. So my boss sent her up to me and she said, I left in my pajamas running down the road with him shooting at us. They lived on a cane farm. And if you are living under the same roof, I wonder how many of those are economical, and how many for the money side, and how many of them are just because the other person won't leave. And if you've got kids and you've been the person who stays home most and they won't leave, I'm telling you, that's a red flag for me for coercive control. So ask yourself, if they've got an income that would let them leave, have they got a mother to go to or a father? Have they got somewhere else to go? If they won't go, if they're really forcing themselves on you and the children, then I think your under one roof is more densely packed with coercive control than any other sort of separation. That's what I'm saying.
So just a reminder to anyone that just listened to that, if you do feel triggered by that, please call Lifeline. If you are wondering, please call 1-800-RESPECT and just talk to somebody about it. And Mum, finally, I guess, I know that's kind of a bit of a downer to end it on, but you've got to remind yourself when going through this whole process, you're right at the start, or maybe you've been sitting in limbo for a little while in this space, but it's taking one step at a time, and you are going to get there. You're going to get out. You're going to get this sorted. It's going to happen. I know when you're at this stage, it feels like the whole weight of everything is on you, and the to-do list is a million miles long, and you don't even know what it is you have to do. It will happen if you take one step at a time and try and keep yourself emotionally supported and together to get yourself through it. Okay? Because mental health is so important during this process.
Yes. And it's kind of a gift to your future. What you do now is a gift to your future. I was there and I'm out and haven't looked back. You will all, like we see people all the time, don't we, Laura, who come to our Q&As and then they drop off because it's all sorted.
You see them go through the process, you see them take those steps and go from, I don't know what to do, to just wondering, this form, blah, blah, blah. What do I put in this? I think that's right, Mum. It is a gift to your future self. I know a lot of people just, maybe they're sleeping on the couch and their ex has come up at midnight saying, I've written this agreement. I'm going to get 80% of the property. You're going to get 20%. If you sign it now, I'll give you it in cash and you can leave. People may want to sign it because they're just so sick of being stuck in that situation. But think about your future self. Are they going to say thank you to that, or are they going to wish you'd hung out longer to get the proper property settlement you need? Okay.
Yeah, so if you have to sign it to be safe, then if you were under pressure when you signed it, it can be overturned usually in law, but don't count on it. Mm-hmm. So, it's just the main thing is keep safe. Keep your only kids safe.
Yeah. And once you're out, once you are living in separate houses or separate places, that's when the real negotiations can start. That's when you can go to mediation. People do mediation when they're separated together under a roof, but that's when you can do all that stuff and get it sorted. But this is just the start. This is just right at the beginning, and it's a lot. But if you take it one step at a time, you will get through it, we promise. And we're giving you big hugs, aren't we, Mum? Because we know how much it sucks at that stage.
Yeah, absolutely. All our virtual hugs to everyone.
Yes. All right. So if you are still feeling a little stressed about some of the things, please go listen to those episodes I've mentioned. I put the links in the show notes, so just scroll down and you can go and watch or listen to those episodes and get some clarity that you need. But please go and see a lawyer.
Okay. I've recorded Pavey in Cases Explained by Lynn. Pavey and Pavey is about separated under one roof. And I will record Davis, which is a 1982 case. So you can see the court's approach these days.
Okay. And that's on Patreon. So if you're interested in listening to Mum on Patreon, it is Patreon, patreon.com. And then you just search for the Divorce Course podcast. I'll put the link in the show notes as well. Mum does lots of videos on cases. So if you're interested in the case side of things, which does give me some comfort when I was going through it to know what the outcome was legally by other people, if it was a similar situation to myself. So, go and listen to some of those cases if that's new. And Mum, thank you again for sharing all your wisdom, and big hugs to you out there who's listening. And I hope you have a beautiful day.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Mum.
Bye, Laura.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.